as a trans woman, I have every right to ask for anything that a cis woman does.
Yeah.
Trans people still have one of the lowest literacy rates in the country.
Correct.
We have one of the highest rates of unemployment.
Correct.
We have one of the highest rates of being disowned by family. Okay, let's not get into the family stuff. The OT changing room is like there's a male changing room and a female one, right? And I was like, where do I go?
You're going from the top of the chain pyramid to being a woman.
I had a really dark time in boys' hostel. The British really ensured that anyone who was queer or queer presenting or in a queer relationship of any kind would be deemed a criminal. The signs were there, babe. Like, I had 7 Justin Bieber posters in my room. Because your mother dresses like a tomboy and she has short hair and she wears pants, your kid is getting gender confused. Who am I? Is this life enough? Is this body what I identify with? The bar has been raised.
Hi from Brut. Welcome to the other side. Well, this side is definitely one of strength, resilience, and a lot of power. Let me take you there. Chat, please give it up for Trinetra Haldar Gummaraju.
Oh, you actually said my name right. Congratulations.
South Indian da, ninge gottilla, nange kannada gottu.
I love it. Chalo, let's go.
Then, since we started off from there, let's take you right back to your childhood. You were raised in Hyderabad.
Yes.
How was it?
Hyderabad is, I think, a city that I haven't explored too much as an adult, but it has some of my most beautiful childhood memories because my earliest schooling years happened there in a school called Gitanjali Devshala, okay? And I swear my first grade class teacher to this day follows me on Instagram and comments on my posts, and she's just like one of my biggest supporters. I think my schooling years were best at that time when I was a child, when I was so free and uninhibited and didn't know so much of what the world considers right or wrong. And I just had the best teachers in that school. So that's what I associate my Hyderabad years with, like just good schooling.
Correct.
And then things got a little complicated.
Yes. And coming to that, you know, I really admire that you have completely taken to yourself at a very young age. Like, let's say, for example, Caitlyn Jenner, she accepted herself, she
very late in life.
Quite late in life. And that can be so tormenting for the person that you are before that. And accepting that, living with that. He was a boxer?
Yeah,
Bruce
she was a boxer.
She was a boxer. But you got onto it really early in life.
Yeah.
Did your environment, did your surroundings help you in any way, or was it just your strength that kept pushing you to that?
I think as far as age is concerned, I am one of the very, very lucky ones, to be honest, because even though we didn't have it easy in my family, people often look at the final result of a transition where a trans person's really happy with their family or with their mom or dad. But what it takes for a family to get to that point across all of this generational trauma. वो नहीं देखता ना लोग. Like, that's the hard part. So I think I grew up at a time, you know, when my parents were really struggling to make ends meet. They found financial freedom much later in life.
Okay.
I still remember, like, my dad's first car was a second-hand Maruti 800, okay? And we were so proud. And, like, he really built it up from there. And my mom got really successful at her work as well. And, you know, they've really struggled. And I think I tried really hard to be that good kid for them by being a straight-A student, studying really hard. Because I was told that I had to be the man of the house. That I had to...
The elder son.
The elder son, the first son. I had to be the man of the house. I had to figure out how to take care of my brother when my parents were working. And they were both working. So it's not like, you know, mom was home. It was a really, really tough time. And so I had this enormous pressure to hide my queerness in some way. Because I felt like if I, you know, showed people who I really was, if I would wear my mother's saris and bindis out in the open, then what would happen when I would become 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old? When you're a child, it's cute.
Yeah.
You know, I think every parent does that, like dress up their little child in pink and whatnot. And it's really
Yeah.
sweet. But when parents are faced with the reality of like what happens to my kid when they grow up,
Yeah.
that's when it's like, okay, where is the man of the house? You know? So I just wanted to be the best possible kid and do well in my life and become a doctor. Not that it was forced. I really was very, very academically focused. I was that kid in class. I would be like, ma'am, that it's cheating kar raha hai. You know, like, I was that kid. Very nerdy, which is so funny because when people look at me today, they would never assume that I was a STEM kid or doctor. Like, in fact, people who know sometimes be like, oh my God, I completely forgot.
Yeah.
But back then I was like this slightly chubby, very nerdy, spectacle wearing, my pants like this high. I was that kid. But under all of that was this little girl who just wanted to be herself and didn't know how to do it. So I thought, I will be the best in class. I will get straight A's. I will top every test. I will get into science in 11th and 12th grade and get into medical school. And I thought if I felt enough academically, then I would feel enough, period.
Correct. Because I was just getting to that.
Yeah.
You trying so hard academically, was it because of the acceptance that you didn't get on the other side and, you know, just wanted to prove yourself?
I would say it's two things. One, I am really fascinated by the human body, right? Always was, even since I was a kid. Because I would sort of look at my own body and wonder, why doesn't it fit who I am on the inside, right?
Yeah.
And then when you study medicine, you realize that, oh, there's actually words to this, right? There are people who don't identify with their bodies and their sex assigned at birth.
Yeah.
And that's called gender dysphoria, right?
Yeah.
And for me, that revelation just blew my mind because I didn't have these words growing up. I'm sure you didn't either.
True.
What
Neither
sex
did our
ed did we have?
parents.
Exactly.
That's the
right?
thing.
Even in school, our sex education was such that, you know, लड़कों को एक class में, लड़कियों को एक और class में, and then they would talk about periods only to the girls.
Yeah.
And boys would be taught about a few things about their anatomy and things, and that was that.
That's
and it was very giggle, hush, hush.
Because the teachers weren't that straightforward as well.
Absolutely. And उसमें तो queerness की बात आती ही नहीं है, right? Like that's so far away.
Yeah.
Where I think to this day, there are doctors who don't know what the word trans means.
Yeah.
And it's really surprising.
Yeah.
But I was always fascinated by the human body. I thought in the 11th grade that there's no doctors in my family. How do I do this? And I went to my friend's father, who was a cardiologist, and he took me to Narayana hospitals in Bangalore. And I watched cardiac surgery the whole day. I watched Dr. Devi Shetty operate on this little 3-month-old, right, who had a ventricular septal defect or a hole in the heart. And he sort of fixed it in front of my eyes. And I was this high schooler that was like, this is magic, you know? And I thought, if I want to use my artistic and creative capabilities, then this is such a beautiful way to do it. Of course, back then, I had no exposure to acting, no idea how to go about that. But that's how the fascination for science happened. And then, of course, there is the, you know, I need to be first. I need to be the best because if I don't do that, then the world has a reason to point a finger at me and say, it's because you're queer or because you're trans that you're not doing well at something, right? So I was like, I will make that my greatest strength. And I will show you that despite me being trans, I can do anything and everything. And it's not even a despite situation. I will make that part of my
Yeah, it's an and also
arsenal.
situation.
Yeah, absolutely. That it's a strength. It's a... I see it as a superpower, to be honest, because it's an enormous privilege to be trans and to get to sit and figure out who you really are. And to, I think being trans allowed me to ask myself some really difficult questions at that time. Such as, who am I? Is this life enough? Is this body what I identify with? Do I agree with the rules imposed on me? You know, am I someone that falls into these neat categories that society expects me to fit? And when you go through that self-exploration and that journey of questioning, do I fit in? It opens up life a particular way to you, and then you can't go back.
Yeah.
So when it comes to your career, you ask the same questions. Is this enough? Am I doing what I want to do?
Yeah.
In relationships, you ask the same questions. Is
Yeah.
this enough? You know, am I really free? Am I getting the freedom that I can give myself? So being trans is not a label to me. It's not an identity. It's a way of life.
Yeah.
And that's what I realized through medicine and my journey there.
Yeah.
So much buck I have done.
No, covered all points very well. But getting into gender dysphoria, and you stated that that is something that came to you only because of your interest in medicine and because of what you were facing mentally. In a TED talk, you'd said that gender is very different from sex, which I think not a lot of people understand or know too much about. Gender is something that's in your brain, and a sex is something that you're physically and biologically assigned, right? And sometimes that's not aligned for all people.
Yeah.
So how did you get to realize that it's not aligning? What were those triggers or those instances that made you feel that? Because it did, I'm sure, start at a very early age, as you said.
100%.
Yeah.
I think, yes, gender and sex are different. That gender is what you identify as, कि आप कौन हो अंदर से, and sex is what your body says you are.
Yeah.
कि आपका physical identity क्या है, what your quote-unquote ling is, right?
Yeah.
But people think, to this day, I will get comments saying this is all Western propaganda. ये तो, you know,
elitist.
whatever.
Yeah.
This is a mental illness.
Yeah.
You know, ये तो मानसिक बीमारी है, all that stuff. I get that to this day. And I think that's important to address first. Gender and sex are not the same thing. We're not just saying that as some random statement, right? This is not folklore. It's not mythology. It's none of that. This is hard facts. These are scientific facts.
Yeah.
How do we know this? Because there was a time when doctors thought that this was a mental illness. And there was a time that doctors actually treated transgender people and homosexual people with all forms of conversion therapy, right? And what is conversion therapy? It's a kind of practice of medicine or religion or any kind of practice where someone tries to fix you, where someone tries to correct you. And doctors ये करते थे.
Yeah.
Doctors gay लोगों को या समलैंगिक लोगों को या trans लोगों को actually conversion therapy से treat करते थे.
Correct. It was also in the West.
It was in the
conversion
West.
camps.
That's where it started. That's where it started, and then it came here, right? So doctors would do things like electroconvulsive therapy, shock therapy.
Yeah.
If a man came to them and said, I want to be a woman, it was almost by default that they were assumed to be schizophrenic, that they would be given all kinds of drugs, including testosterone, to boost their natural testosterone levels. And जो हमने देखा, what we realized through the course of medicine since the 1930s to the 2000s is every or almost all attempts at trying to fix people or change people and make them from LGBTQ to normal, quote unquote, fails. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And when you do that to a human being, it really worsens their quality of life. It worsens their mental health outcomes. It worsens their physical health. It increases your risk of suicide and your quality of life really suffers, right? So we've understood this after many decades that if you try to fix a queer person, अगर आप ये कोशिश करो कि एक LGBT इंसान को normal बनाया जाए, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Scientifically, as a doctor, I'm saying this, it does not work, and we need to realize this.
Yeah.
And then doctors realize that the only way to help a queer person with their mental health is support them in their identity and actually support their transition if that's what they want, you know. And that is something that doctors struggle to understand even today. You will still find allopathic doctors, Ayurvedic doctors, alternative medicine practitioners, religious gurus who offer this conversion therapy.
Yeah.
Because when a child comes out to their parents are worried, you know, parents want the best for their children. Parents don't want to see their kids suffer. So what do? They take their kids to a doctor or someone that they think knows better. And very often that can be a guru, it can be a religious figure, it can be a doctor, whatever, a counselor, a psychologist.
A psychiatrist in very sad cases.
Absolutely. For me too. I was taken
Are you serious?
Yeah, I was 10 years old when I was taken to a psychiatrist.
10 years and you started taking meds?
I was fortunately not given meds.
Okay.
But the person that my parents took me to at age 10, she was like, you need a more masculine influence in your life. And she was like, because your mother dresses like a tomboy and she has short hair and she wears pants, your kid is getting gender confused. And your dad needs to make you play sports, and it's quite strange
That
conversation.
it comes from doctors and educated people like that.
It's very scary because people believe doctors
Blindly.
right? Blindly. And I have a lot of respect for my peers and all that we go through to become doctors, but I feel like when there's misinformation and it comes from a doctor, that's dangerous.
Yes.
That's very dangerous.
Yeah.
And I was, I think, only 20 or 21 in medical school when I discovered that, okay, these are the people to go to, these are the doctors to go to, and this is how I can go about becoming myself. And, there are people in the West, there are endocrinologists and doctors in the West who are able to diagnose gender dysphoria at an early age. And that's honestly the best time to go about any kind of intervention. Of course, not surgical, or of course, not something permanent. That should be something an adult does.
Yeah.
But even as far as counseling is concerned, right, the earlier you're able to pick up on something, you can intervene so that the child's mental health doesn't suffer.
Of course, yeah.
So speaking of Caitlyn Jenner, again, I'm not going to comment on that politics and things, but my heart does go out to anybody who had to live in a really traditional or conservative environment, which didn't allow them to really identify themselves early on. For me, it was 20 and not 40, and I am grateful. But sometimes I do wish it happened earlier. But I'm just glad that there are schemes in place, there are welfare measures in place. It's only up to us now to take that forward and make it better, right? Because unfortunately, trans people still have one of the lowest literacy rates in the country.
Correct.
We have one of the highest rates of unemployment.
Correct.
We have one of the highest rates of being disowned by family.
Yeah.
One of the lowest participations in economy in general, right? But people don't realize that that's changing. We're also tax-paying citizens of the country. We deserve to have the welfare that we need access to.
Yeah.
Especially in health, right?
Yeah.
And I realize that as a doctor, that there is
And
so much more to do.
More so in health, right?
100%, because so much of our access to our identity happens through the medical system, right? Like doctors saved my life.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I must admit that actors saved my life also. But that's a whole other story.
How so? Okay, well, we have a lot of time. We're definitely going to get into that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about how was your medical journey in terms of, supplements and all of these things, because it can be really difficult. It can be a very difficult process.
Yeah.
I am somebody who can only comment from the outside. But there are a lot of people who might be watching this right now who want that kind of strength, right?
Yeah.
Who want to understand what is the process that happens after conversion. Did you have to take any estrogen supplements? Of course you did. And how long did it last for the prep of your transition? For your gender affirmation surgery? What was that procedure like? Mentally and emotionally and physically as well, I want to know.
Right. In popular culture, I feel people don't realize that trans people don't just have one surgery and khatam.
Yeah.
Like it's not one quote unquote sex change and overnight you're this new person. It doesn't work like that. For me, the whole process lasted 6.5 years, medically speaking.
Yeah.
And some aspects of it are lifelong. But to really break it down, I think anyone that feels a disconnect between their gender identity and their biological sex, the first step for anybody should be accessing a really good mental health professional. That's very important because you need to have a solid support system no matter what decision you take with your gender identity, or even if you don't, just to help yourself figure out who you are. That one person can be really, really helpful when you don't have other sources of support, because very often biological families don't get it. Friends may not get it, or you may not want to tell people yet.
Yeah.
So that therapist can be a really safe space for you at that point in time.
Yeah.
Then if you do think that, okay, I need to take the next step, and you have got a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, then typically the next process would be to consult a gynecologist or an endocrinologist or someone that has access to hormone replacement therapy.
Okay.
Right? More often than not, it's an MD medicine doctor, could be an endocrinologist, but someone who really understands hormones.
Yeah.
And then you're prescribed hormone replacement therapy, which you stay on for a minimum of 1 year before undergoing any kind of surgery, right? And that process essentially balances your testosterone and estrogen levels by reducing testosterone and increasing estrogen, essentially.
Yeah.
And what that does is it brings about all of the gender affirming, feminizing changes to your body. Whether that be fat redistribution, whether that means changes in
Hair
growth and things like that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, surgical aspects, completely personal, up to you. There is no fixed way of going about this. Different people have different bodies and different, goals and outcomes, and it depends on what you want. But,
Of course.
sex reassignment surgery or gender affirming genital surgery specifically is something that many of us do undergo. Almost half or more of us see that as a goal in our transition.
As a gender dysphoric person?
Yeah, as a trans person or a gender dysphoric person. That is one of, the many goals that we may have, which also means that it is a medical need.
Yeah.
And it's not cosmetic.
Yeah.
It's not something that's frivolously done.
Yeah.
It's major surgery.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like, how do I describe it? It's, for me personally, it's a very spiritual journey, that entire process that I undertook, and we'll talk about that. But I can't stress on this enough. It's not frivolous. It's a need.
Of course. Yeah.
And
it's a life-altering journey.
And let me give you an example of what I mean, right?
Yeah.
In a country where there are such few practitioners of gender-affirming surgery, it opens up room to a lot of quackery. It's sad, but it's true. There are people all across India that I know who've gone to certain doctors and been treated badly, first of all, but also surgery was performed in botched ways, let's put it like that. And very often procedures get botched. Very often procedures are done without adequate training, and the outcomes are devastating. There are people who have complications for life.
Yeah,
there are people who pass away from the surgery. There are people who, really suffer because doctors did not give them the care that they deserved.
Of course.
So why would we undergo something like that if it was frivolous, if it was not a need?
Yeah.
We turn our lives upside down. We go through enormous discrimination. We go through all of this trauma for what? It's not a joke. So clearly it's important for an individual.
Yeah.
And that only means that, the healthcare system needs to improve to accommodate all of these needs for vulnerable populations, especially the trans community. And I'm glad that that's happening slowly.
Yeah. I mean, again, not to make it frivolous, you're going from the top of the chain pyramid to being a woman. So obviously, it's not frivolous.
But I would say that that's also a misconception, because I wish I was at the top of the chain. I wasn't.
That's what society has done though, right?
But the thing is, as a pre-transition trans woman, I did not have the life of a man.
Yeah, yeah.
I was always feminine. I was always different. I was that kid in class who was so girly, so feminine that I was bullied and harassed by my PT teacher.
Did you have any friends really close to you during your...
I did have a few, but to continue what I was saying, in school, people don't realize that queer people before they transition, or trans people before they transition, don't have easy lives or conformist lives. And as a result of being so different, we're subjected to enormous amounts of bullying.
Yeah.
And my entire schooling life was full of that, whether physical, sexual, whatever. It was a dark time, And I saw, and the people who gave me that bullying were men, but also women. very often.
Oh.
So, I don't think we realize that bullying doesn't come from one gender and support doesn't come from one gender. It's all a mix of things.
I think
and
it's the person.
It's the person. And of course, there is gender involved there, but we don't enjoy the privileges of men before we transition. Sorry to say, but it's true.
No, absolutely. I completely understand.
Yeah.
And also, it's the pressure of the society to make you be a man, right? Which is even more frustrating. I'm sure that's a huge burden to bear.
And it's also so sad that at this day in 2025, I know people who've been forced to get married because that's apparently like the one-stop quick fix to everything in Indian society, to get married and have a baby.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking to know that it's not just one life that's going to be affected by this, but it's multiple people and it's a whole family. And I just hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Because there's no one to blame in a situation like that. There's society, there's people, and you want people to have the support system to be themselves. And when they can't, lives are ruined.
Yeah.
But yeah, in that regard, I'm very privileged. Thankfully, touch wood.
You also said that,
Majorly touch wood.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, it's funny that so much of my awareness and knowledge towards this is not from a teacher telling me or from my parents telling me. It's from me watching Orange is the New Black, Sophia in Orange is the New Black.
Absolutely. Laverne Cox is such an icon.
Absolutely.
I think she was the first trans actor that I saw on any show when I was, I think, 14 or 15 years old. And there is this scene, I remember it so well, where she's sort of in prison and she's in front of the mirror and she looks at herself and it cuts to her pre-transition life where she had to be this jock and she was married to this woman and had a child and
she was wearing a dress at that point.
She's wearing lingerie inside of her jersey and then it cuts back to her present self and she's like looking at her naked body in the mirror and I was just like, this is so powerful. And that was my moment. I was like, I have to do this with my life.
This was your pre-transition?
Pre-transition, pre-medicine, pre-acting, pre-everything. It was like really, it was a very formative time in my life and she really did influence me in that way.
What else triggered you to make this decision in your life? Of course, it was you. It was your brain telling you otherwise. I mean, the right thing. But what were the triggers?
I just was tired of being sad, bro. You really boil it, narrow it down to this one thing. I was just sad, and I was like, this thing is making me sad, and I don't want to be sad anymore. It's basic, you know. And the thing is, it wasn't just being sad. It was a very profound sense of grief of not being able to be myself. And a very profound sense of I'm wasting away. I'm rotting away. And if I keep going down this path, then I will become something I don't recognize. And I will become the man that everyone wanted me to be. But I will absolutely lose myself. And I can't do that to myself. And there was just like this little voice inside of me that was like, wear a dress, please.
And I'm so glad that you listened to the little voice in your head because, oof.
And I did. And I started wearing dresses in college, literally to my college fashion shows. And I would do drag and I would go to these parties dressed up in saris. And I had a full beard, mind you. I was still presenting as male and living in boys' hostel. And the way that those caretakers and my hostel mates would look at me, they were like, what is going on with this kid? And it was bad. The people would come and scratch faggot on my door. And by the end of my hostel life, I had a few friends, thank God. My friend of 10 years, Anirudh, he's just finished his postgrad. He's leaving.
You posted about him just today. Congratulations on him becoming a surgeon.
I mean, I will convey congratulations to him. But we started out in boys' hostel and we were like, we will be surgeons, and he was like that one person in boys' hostel who was like, no matter what, I think you're damn cool and we will be friends. And that did not change
How
in this
nice.
one decade. And he's seen me through so many phases of my life when I looked so different. And he's just always been that. I've met his parents. His parents have come home. They love me. I love them. It's this really wholesome situation.
Oh.
But apart from that, in a few other instances, I had a really dark time in boys' hostel. There was an instance of sexual harassment that I reported. It got really complicated because I was still male on documents, right? And we don't have like gender neutral sexual harassment laws, so to speak. But I think what triggered me to really take that one final decision was experiencing joy for the first time. And I remember this so clearly. I put on this sari and I went to this freshers party for my juniors wearing this green and blue sari. And I had makeup on and the girls were like, "You're one of us. Like, we will take you as one of us." And we were taking pictures in the girls' washroom. And it was really like sweet. And I think I discovered what sisterhood meant for the first time.
Yeah.
And what it is to have a Saheli and to be a Saheli. And I'm very proud to say that it's actually the other women in my life and the girls in my life that showed me the kind of woman that I can be. And once I'd experienced that, there was no going back. I could not go back to being a boy in boys' hostel. I was like, this is prison. I have to leave. And I did it. That's where I came from.
And that was in between college? That was in between your MBBS?
Yeah, that was between my 3rd and 4th year in med school, and it was really, really annoying.
Yeah, I
like
was just
beyond the toughness, it was just annoying because you have 3 subjects. You have ENT, Ophthal, and no, this was actually between 2nd and 3rd year that I started HRT, and I had surgery between my 3rd and 4th years.
Okay.
So this elaborate process happened in college. And I remember the funniest instance being the OT changing room is like there's a male changing room and a female one, right? And I was like, where do I go? Like, I don't know where to go because I don't look like I belong anywhere. And then there were like a few girlfriends of mine who were like, we will protect you, like, come with us. And then there were also like other girls who were very uncomfortable with that because they saw me as a man. And I understand some apprehension there, but there were also some women who were vehemently against, my taking up any space. Yeah, and it was sad and to see that coming from women. But like I said, transphobia is not a gender-specific phobia or a gender-specific prejudice. You will see biological mothers give up their queer children all the time.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't depend on what's between your legs. It's really a matter of, are you empathetic or not?
Yeah.
And that is beyond degrees. It is beyond education. It is beyond everything else. It's a fundamental human quality you either have or you don't have. And it's as simple as that.
True. I think it's also beyond history because there are so many instances of there being queer and transgender people in our histories, in our mythology books, in Mahabharata, in Ramayana.
Yeah.
So the shift from that to transphobia, especially in India, is quite unfortunate to see because there is some place in between that the confusion has happened.
Yeah.
And I think the process of just trying to neutralize that is I think what you're doing really well, advocating for this particular community, being so strong and out and loud about it.
But speaking of that, what you just said about mythology and history, being queer threatens 2 fundamental things, right? It threatens a family's bloodline.
Yeah.
Because if you're queer,
Yeah.
then you cannot be the man of the house.
Yeah.
You cannot marry someone from your same community or caste. And you cannot reproduce and take forward that bloodline and bring home that dowry. That's the mindset. That's how people think, right? Now, suddenly you're a liability if you're a woman.
Yeah.
And you're taking money away from the family. You're taking resources away from the family. And you're ending the bloodline. And so that really threatens the way that caste functions in the country. That's really important to talk about.
Yeah.
And the other thing that it really threatened was the British and their sense of power and their
Yeah.
sense of divide and rule. And they really wanted to use their Victorian morality and segregate us in so many ways,
Yeah.
right?
And they use the capitalization of fear really well in
Really
us.
well. In the colonial era, the British introduced something really nuts. It was called the Criminal Tribes Act,
Okay.
whereby they declared queer presenting people or
Okay.
people that looked queer or visibly so as a criminal tribe. And their logic was these people are habituated to committing crimes like sodomy, quote unquote,
Okay.
or wearing cross-gendered clothing or spreading immoral values in society and things. So they were just deemed a criminal tribe. And from that came Section 377, where any sort of intercourse against the order of nature was criminalized and things
Yeah.
like that. So the British really ensured that anyone who was queer or queer presenting or in a queer relationship of any kind would be deemed a criminal.
Yeah.
So-
I read this crazy section where it says they're murderers, they're rapists. I'm like, what in the hell is going on?
Yeah, so I think that sort of branding of queer people as villains is something that we've seen through history, through medicine, in our textbooks even, but funnily enough, also in entertainment. If you look at a lot of the queer and trans representation of the 90s and the early 2000s, you will see that any queer character or trans character is inherently a villain. Okay? Is scary, is this
Or
joke
unimportant.
of a person, or
Yeah.
unimportant, or even just someone to be scared of and laugh at.
Yeah.
You know, I still remember watching some scenes from this movie. I will not name it. I was going to name it. Caught myself at the right time. But there was a movie that, you know, there was this queer-coded or androgynous villain who would wear a sari and make certain scary noises. And it gave me nightmares. And it gave a lot of my friends nightmares also. And so when you see trans people on the streets and it's an image that invokes this scary memory, it's वो बैठ जाता है ना मन में, like it's like now part of your system. That fear is part of your system, and it starts so young with kids, you know. But I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of really funny trans characters that I kind of resonated with because I was different also. But I didn't want to be a joke. I didn't want to be something to laugh at.
Belittled, yeah.
And I wanted to be someone that people were proud of. I wanted to be someone that my parents were proud of, my friends were proud of. And I tried to achieve that in academic ways. But at some point, you have to confront who you are and say that, okay, this is who I am. And I will show you that this is beautiful. That trans is not this idea of absolute rejection from society and just horrible things happening to you. And those things happen, but we're beyond that.
Yeah.
There is so much beauty in our lives. I'm so happy for the friendships I have. I'm so happy for this body and this face. I mean, look at it. It's stunning.
Yeah, that face card, bro. Yes.
I know how narcissistic that sounded, but listen, in a world that doesn't like to appreciate trans people, we need to show ourselves a little extra self-love.
No, I think you should
know?
call it self-love.
Self-love, 100%. I think we'll talk about self-love in a bit, but we were talking about what mythology and things like that, no? I'm not a religious person at all, never have been, which is funny because my name is Trinetra. It's a synonym for goddess Durga, right?
You gave yourself that name?
I did. I chose it for myself, such a rare privilege.
Yeah.
But it didn't come from religious reasons. It came from this connection to my Bengali roots, where Durga Puja was this really essential festival for us. Pujo. And beyond, you know, the culture of it was this story of a very powerful female figure who had beauty, but also strength.
And
intelligence, who could do something that no god could.
Yeah.
Which is why she was created, right? So I found a lot of power in that story of creating myself and doing something that perhaps other people couldn't. And therefore the name Trinetra. And, you know, whenever we visit a pandal to this day, it's such a surreal feeling to be in front of the goddess and to offer prayer and to sort of take all of that culture in and to realize that this is the power that I always aspired to. This is the story I wanted to tell. And it represents feminine power. Yeah.
Absolutely. This was your personal story, but I'm 100% sure your parents had.
We talked about it so much, bro. My God, we have gone on and on and on.
Trin, that's why you're here, by the way. But through this, I do want to, if anybody is watching and wants that courage and the strength to break it to their parents, I'm sure it wasn't a one-time thing. This was a series of talks and a series of, conversations with your parents as well.
Yeah.
How did that journey go about for you?
It was bad, man. It was like, it was quite rough.
Yeah.
Because the way that Indian parents are raised is they're also following what society taught them. You can't blame them.
Yeah, they don't know
They don't know any better.
No.
They're also operating from a space of never having understood mental health or therapy. They don't know what these things are.
Yeah. As an adult, I know that now.
Correct.
I always used to think, why are my parents like, why don't they know about this? But then they were also raised much, I think much worse than we were. Not
much worse in many ways.
Yeah.
In the sense that they were also a product of their circumstance. And I see that now, but when you're a child and you just want your parents to be proud of you and to tell you that it's going to be okay. But your father says, these people are mentally ill and they need help. What are you doing? Or your mother says, I had a nightmare that my child has grown breasts. I can't take that.
How did you overcome that?
I really cut myself off from them. And I said that I will not tell you anything. I will go through this on my own. I will become independent. I will become hyper independent as your daughter, and I will show you that I can do it. And that was painfully lonely, to be bullied in school and college and to be sort of on your own because you had something to prove, right? But I feel like that's every elder daughter ever. Right? Are you an elder daughter? Any chance?
I'm a younger daughter. I'm a younger child.
Yeah, I feel like it's like every elder daughter ever where, you are, even if you're not a man or you've stepped away from being a man, you still feel like the man of the house where I need to take care of things. I need to take care of everything and everybody. And when my parents were struggling to make ends meet, it was really hard for the both of them to be good parents, to be present for us and to take care of our emotional needs. And what that essentially meant was I was making my brother study. I was taking care of my own studies and being a parent figure to him in many ways. And I just couldn't be queer. I couldn't be that version of myself. So when
you didn't have the time.
Yeah, and when I did come out, I was like 13, 14, and we were watching, I think, Coffee with Karan, where my mum said something slightly derogatory about, Karan's mannerisms and things. And I was so offended. I was like, whatever you want to say about somebody, this is not it. Like, this is not criticism. This is just plain homophobia and hate. And she was like, why are you getting so defensive? And like, why are you, taking his side? It's like, maybe because I'm gay. What do you do about it?
What, you said that?
Yeah.
What happened then?
I was like, what if I was also like him? What are you going to do? And the dhakka that hit her system, she was just like, huh? My son, my beta. I mean, she didn't expect this to happen, right? Like, no parent really does. The signs were there, babe. Like, I had 7 Justin Bieber posters in my room. I had like, all of these really attractive men, all over my walls and things like that. And so I can't believe my parents didn't see this coming because I was like, it was right there. It was literally right there. But parents also like to live in denial. They don't like to see what's right in front of them because it's too hard or too painful to come to terms with a reality that doesn't align with what the world expects. And for me, that meant having to give them that jolt to their system to understand. But over 3, 4, 5 years, they really sort of, did the work.
Yeah.
That's what I appreciate. They went to therapy. They went to professionals, spoke to other parents of queer people. and understood what this world really entails and how to support me. And that led to my father coming to Bangkok with me for 30 days to stay with me when I was recovering from my sex reassignment surgery. And that was the most intense pain I've ever felt in my entire life. I was bedridden for a month. I could barely walk.
Yeah.
I was on medication. I was sedated half the time.
Yeah.
And my dad was there cooking like pasta for me and making omelette, like doing all of these things. Really, such an antithesis to what he used to be. And how I was raised to be his son. And if I didn't play cricket, I would be beaten. If I didn't play tennis with the boys or cricket with the boys, I would get yelled at. So I would just like pray to my mom and like beg, my nanny or whatever. I'd just be like, please don't tell my father that I did not go and play. And I watched High School Musical instead.
No, I completely understand. I feel like mothers still come to terms with it very easily. Not very easily, but more so than... Because women are more emotional. Women understand,
I don't know if we're inherently more emotional. I think we're expected to be. That society expects us to be nurturers. We're conditioned to be nurturers, and men are conditioned to be unemotional and cold and hard on the inside. And my mom took it just as hard. It wasn't like she had it any easier. And they both went through a really rough patch in their marriage because of it. And now I can talk about it because it's been so long. But they blamed each other for not raising me right, where my dad sort of said, because you've raised him to be soft, he's become like this. And my mom would say, because you're such a, macho enforcing dad, where you expect your son to be this way, you're pressurizing him and he's trying to be the opposite of that. And,
that's what kids always do. Also.
Yeah, we don't listen to what our parents tell us. But I think apart from that, they just didn't have the science and the vocabulary and the evidence to show that if this is something that's happening for like 15 years, 20 years, and this is not a one-off thing, this is not something that is a phase that will pass. It's very possibly a reality for our son, who now needs to be our daughter, and we need to understand that and take it from there. And that's where their journey started as well. But yeah, now I steal my mom's saris, I steal her jewelry. She's like, in your wedding, what do you want to wear? And I was like, Mom, for a wedding, someone else is also necessary. Like, not just saris.
More importantly, love life. Do you have anyone? Just like put it out there.
I mean, maybe.
I saw your picture, your story.
Let's just say I'm very happy.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah, that's all that
matters. As long
matters.
as you are happy.
Yeah. And I don't like to discuss specifics because it involves another person's privacy. But I think it's taken me 27 years of my life to realize that just because I'm trans, it doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to ask for things or want things or need things in a relationship. Because when I started dating, I can't tell you how badly I was treated by so many people,
Post your transition?
Post my transition. And I was 21, so I was experiencing dating for the first time in college, as opposed to many of us who maybe experience it in school or high school or whatever. And for me, I was just happy to be seen as a woman, to be honest, because that was such a low bar at the time, and the only bar, to be honest, that if someone validated my body as a woman, I felt like I was enough. But you
Did that
realize
lower your
that
standards in any way?
that's where my standards were. They were so low because I had been bullied and harassed my entire life. I was like, okay, if he calls me she, I'm enough, and he wants to hang with me, that's... But then you come across people who would much rather keep you a secret or a dirty secret in their lives and not hang with you in public or not make you meet friends and family. And
you face this?
All the time. I mean, now not so much, but back then when I didn't know to ask for better, I was okay with it. I hate to admit it, but that was a time that I was really okay being someone's secret because I didn't think that I deserved or I could be with someone who was proud of me in public.
But you do, you know that, right?
I do know now.
Yeah. What are the ways that you've told yourself this?
I think for the longest time, I tried to compensate for that stigma and that prejudice through achievement.
Yeah.
And I tried really hard to become the doctor that I wanted to be, to then become an actor and become a public figure and an inspiration of some sort. Because I was like, if I do those things, then perhaps it'll counter the stigma or counter the transphobia that someone might have.
Yeah.
But then I was faced with the harsh reality of the fact that that's not true. You could be all of these things and someone could still be ashamed of you. And someone could still think that you're not enough. The most beautiful women that I know get cheated on. It's facts.
J-Lo. Beyonce.
Shakira.
Yeah, so I think it's just about two people. It's not about how, like a specific gender.
Correct. It's about a relationship and what you think your worth is, what your self-worth is. And my self-worth was so low that I didn't think that I deserved any more. But I think achievement taught me that you can't achieve your way out of low self-worth. You can't beautify yourself out of low self-worth. It doesn't work like that. You could be beautiful, you could be smart, you could be many different things, but if you don't believe that you deserve respect, you will not get it. Because you don't give it to yourself first to begin with. And it's taken a long time to actually find I'm going to say too much. Let me put it like this. I think I'm very fortunate in my life to have come across people who healed parts of me that they didn't break, who gave me a kind of affection and love that made me realize that I'm very normal, actually, and that there is connection beyond your gender. There is connection that happens in so many ways, in so many things that you may have in common with somebody. And I know now with so much certainty that as a trans woman, I have every right to ask for anything that a cis woman does in any relationship. And that we will not settle for the bare minimum or lesser than the bare minimum.
Yes.
Because we are beautiful, first of all. But on top of that, you know, look at how powerful we as trans women or generally as women are. You know, look at where we are in 2025, where there's so much to do still, but we're sitting here today talking about these conversations or having these conversations on such a mainstream platform.
Correct.
Look at, like, we're talking about representation in film. Like earlier, we couldn't even do that, right?
Yes.
So...
And in the right way.
Yeah, let's put it like this. The bar has been raised. And it is not where it used to be.
Absolutely.
And that is both a personal journey. It's also a result of many wonderful people in my life. Yeah.
Trinetra, it's really happy to see you personally. So happy.
Thank you.
And content. Yeah.
I mean, in many ways. I think you need to have a healthy balance of contentment and ambition, because without ambition, you will not grow.
True.
And without contentment, you will never feel like you're enough.
True.
So it needs to be both at all times.
Yin and yang.
Yeah.
Balance.
100%. I am enough, but I want more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Want more in terms of acting now?
In terms of so many things, you know, I want more in terms of my, you know, financial goals, because I now realize as a woman what it means to be financially independent, right?
Yeah.
So there are goals there. I want more in terms of... Okay, let's not get into the family stuff. This is sounding like relationship therapy. My God. No.
Wow, this is so weird. I've been called a therapist so many times. It's not even funny.
No.
Right here.
But what I really want more of in 2025 is to see more people write trans characters.
Yeah.
And even if they don't write trans characters, to cast trans actors in just female parts, because we have the physicality for it.
I'm sure that you've auditioned for female roles.
Yeah,
What are the
recently,
challenges
actually.
that you face?
Through my acting journey, what I firstly realized is I have enormous admiration for the craft of it. When I started as Meher on Made in Heaven, I didn't have as much craft, barely any, right? I had a wealth of information from Pooja Swaroop, who helped me through the coaching bit of it, but I had no experience, and it was my first time being around such stalwarts like Vijay Raz and Radhika Apte, and I was just so scared the entire time that I would be swallowed, by this world and by this set. But I think Zoya really made sure that this character was told in a way that did justice to our community in so many ways. And Meher is a full-fledged human being that has needs and wants and desires and a job and a life. Outside of the trauma that she goes through, the trauma is there. Everybody has it, but we're so much more than that also. We can be excellent wedding planners. We can be in love. We can be daughters, and we can be so much outside of trans. And I think Meher really showed that to people. I think through acting and through my workshops, I realized that I want to do so much more than just that one character. I want to show people that trans people are diverse. That we are an entire range, right? We're not just one person. And I want to play a pregnant woman at some point, even if not a trans person. I want to play a detective. I want to play a cop. I want to play
the girl next door.
I want to be a manic pixie dream girl also at some point. And I'm very happy to say that it's been a healthy mix of trans and cis parts, which is incredible that in 2025, we as trans women are getting to test for cis parts. Hasn't happened or worked out yet, unfortunately, but I do hope that in the next 5 years, I've played a cis part in a movie, or, just a woman, beyond labels, beyond cis, trans, whatever, because women are women at the end of the day. And you don't see a female detective sit and talk about her gender in like explicit detail.
Correct.
You don't see a male cop sit and talk about main to aadmi hu, heterosexual.
Because those lines have been defined for generations and generations, right?
So it's up to us now to normalize things. And I think it will happen. 60-second masterclass. Very cool. Okay.
And Trinetra, from you, I want the audience to get a masterclass on how to truly accept yourself.
I would say that I am not the right person to give you this masterclass because I'm not a perfect person. I have days when I don't feel perfect. There are days when I don't love myself. And I struggle with it. And I think I don't want to position myself as some sort of self-love expert, but I will say this. I've come a very long way. And the one thing that's helped me is to understand that you cannot please everybody. Not everybody is going to like you. Not everybody is going to love you. You are not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. You need to start being comfortable with disappointing people. You need to be comfortable with not being liked. If you're not okay with that, you will suffer in life, especially in an industry which requires you to be exposed to so many different kinds of people and their opinions, whether it's your audience, whether it's your colleagues. If you're okay with being disliked, then you can find yourself. Otherwise, you're just trying to be something that everyone wants you to be. I can't do that. So start there. Be very okay with saying, you don't like me, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. So yeah, it starts there.
Thank you so much, Trinetra, for spending so much time with us.
You've been very kind and very gracious with all of your questions, and I had a blast answering them. So thank you.
Thank you.
Two 27-year-old girls.
Killing it.
Talking about life. I love it. Chalo, cheers to that.
Okay, that's a wrap.